Sick, sick. Lovely. Lovely. Walk around and find out. Hello, hi. We can wait for some fools, for some Mars. The more the merrier. Oh, that tickles. Okay. On, I guess I was just kind of in my own world, and I wanted to share what I've come up with. What seems to fall out of out of these cards and into my hands. Um, but I was just considering, that oftentimes we take in all of this awareness and information and research and what have you, um, or enlightening and awakening or whatever it is, um, and can get very into, and I've talked about this before, but can get very into like a consumerist, knowledge hungry, but none the integration, or, experience hungry, but none the grounding or integration, um, or the ways in which, people brag about how many medicine ceremonies they've been in, um, but haven't actually listened to the spirits, haven't actually integrated the experience. Um, or very much even just like nom 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 self-help material, and do not act on the things in which they are reading or ingesting. Um, and so I was like, okay, we know all of the, ills and wills of America. We know all of the outs of it at this point. We know that it's fucked. We know that shit's pretty fucked. And that people kind of dropping the ball as far as humanity goes. Um, oh, interesting. Interesting. Ooh, okay. Um, sorry, I just noticed something else. But so in that thought process, I'm like, okay, we know America's an a-hole. But what is underneath that? What's the vulnerability? What's the weakness? What's the jugular, eh? Which is true of like even like game character coding in any video game. The codes that go into developing a boss at any level, um, works within a sort of triptych of its skills and vulnerabilities, and there's like an algorithm of how many things can be true at once, so that you do have this timed opportunity to be able to undercut and beat the level, right? Um, that was something that I just gathered off of pirate software, because it's interesting how much coding and tarot, or spirit and science really overlay. And he's a very charming, very knowledgeable coder and hacker. So big love to pirate software. Gosh, doing this on TikTok is always so interesting. Um, because people are so funny. But so I'm sitting there, I'm considering this. America's the video game, level boss. Uh, what is its weakness? Like, what is my in? What is our in as a collective? What is key information in being able to sort of defeat the trials of these times? And so I worked my way out, and then in bottom of the deck was the death card, which was very interesting. Um, and I do feel like it was a very clear statement of like the empire falling, a very clear statement of that power sort of shifting hands. And that is ultimately a fear of any company, of any passing down of power is this fear of change and whether or not that change will redirect or will continue growth in one direction or another. It's like passing down, like royalty, like passing down the throne. Um, and that is a key moment of vulnerability and passing down of power in power exchange and changing hands, which, if you think about it, happens all of the time because money is constantly exchanging hands. And therefore, the power structure that America has built itself on is actually the legs and hands of many people, of many things, of many entities, of many other countries, even that ultimately uphold it as well. So it becomes its own truth that is then consented to. And this was something that also shocked me when I learned more about the level of land that America has in other continents entirely, in military bases and farmland, et cetera, et cetera. But military bases specifically, because it creates such unrest for the places that it's in as well. Like Australia, for instance, has American military bases. I've noticed that with states even that are very conducive to military bases, are very much built around bases. It mimics a college town in a way that it's not quite haha, that's funny. Um but I'm pumped. Nice Oliver. Um college towns. Um which, if you consider, that is also very much the ways in which they sort of create this utopia, this like small, unreal kind of village setting, much like Disney World, much like Washington, D.C., honestly. I found Washington, D.C. really unsettling because it seemed very sedated and it seemed a lot like a Disney World park, like very painted, very primed, very manicured, very compartmentalized in such a way that it felt like Disney World if it was America themed, and I found it very eerie. But it is also a very strange little haunted place. And many of the churches have paved over cemeteries to build playgrounds, which I find very interesting. And if you know anything about um, Cold War child science experiments, or honestly, even Nazi doctors and their experiments on twins and psychic children, um, then you'd also find that very interesting and disturbing. Um, but so uh, uh, this changing of power, changing of opinions is a very vulnerable time for America. And that is a good thing. As disunited as things can feel, as segregated as things can feel, the differing of opinions means America is very unstable, means that there is fear underneath the surface, and that the surface is very thin. Much like the line between day and night is very thin, much like the veil between this world and the next is also very thin. So, so positive things. What a positive look on the death card. It's about time we got to see it in just the light of new tomorrows that it brings. Um, let's see what else. What else? I pulled these already. Where's my little Eight of Wands, Hierophant, Page of Swords, was the other general spread. Was our like half of the Merkaba, actually, now that I see the way that these are arranged. Beautiful. Which is very much the structure of my general readings, my by donation, pay what you can readings. Um, because I like to work in threes. And because I like to play within time and space. So Eight of Wands. Um, American vulnerability, America's vulnerability. Um, Overwhelm for sure, keeping people in a state of overwhelm, but also attack. The act of overwhelming. 100% like it's sonic weapons, and that hasn't been around for, I mean, that hasn't been like a secret for very long. Um, I find that so ironic. Only God is real, not these frauds. The level of irony and cognitive dissonance in that statement is absolutely hilarious. But stick around, we can dig a little deeper. Um, Sonic weapons, frequency weapons. There's very much frequency emitters that can stunt your speech, that can fry your phone, that can disperse a crowd, that can enrage a crowd. Have you ever seen that movie? They clone Tyrone. It's a wild movie, but there's some interesting overlays to reality. I'd love to know if anybody's actually seen that. Oh, it doesn't have great reading comprehension. Also, a weakness of America statistically. Adults can really only read on a sixth grade level, so their comprehension skills are at a very low bar. And I also think that's why American society doesn't really know how to honor, protect, or um, respect children, because children feel on a much more thorough basis and aren't forced yet to intellectualize or pathologize or rationalize those feelings. Um, And so it creates the experience of seeing that, of witnessing that when you have betrayed that can create a lot of anger, can create a lot of rage. This is also something that America very much capitalizes on. For as much as, there's theories that there's some other entity in another place that's siphoning off our emotions, America does just fine with it by itself. Um, because so much of its information, be it media or journalism or what have you, like physical, visual media or tangible text or what have you, is designed in such a way so as to use sensationalized language and to stimulate response emotionally. This is also a key point in the design of Facebook or the metaverse in general. And that's not just me in the card saying that. That's very much documentaries about that. So God hates white trash. Read a fucking book. Uh, but the race to the root of the nervous system and facilitating addiction, it also goes hand in hand with this overwhelm, and that's very much all of the feelings that be coming at us, my friend. Um, There's also something to be said about levels of radiation, and just the impact of radio waves and magnetic waves on the ether. And one of those things that America capitalizes on is like it's created a reality in which you have to see it to believe it. Um, and yet radiation exists and has incredible impacts. And again, just not my thought, but something that's been studied and written about since the inception of the internet, really, and how it coincides with health issues that are also getting progressively bad, progressively worse, progressively more thoroughly strong holding on the body. Um, there's many research about it, and also the idea of poison. Um, it's a slow and silent death, and it's one in which you don't even know is happening. There's absolutely a reason why there's plastic in everything. It's even gone so far as to affect wildlife, um, and be found in the bees, which is going to directly impact their own frequency, their own ability to survive, and their ability to create food for not just us, but the entire ecosystem. It becomes a very dependent uh, process, like flicking one domino and the rest fall, which is something that we really ought to not underestimate either. In this fragile state, we may be looking for something so much bigger in a fall, but it can be so small. It can be a fly. It can be uh, a bug, it can be an insect, it can be an ant, that then impacts so many other things. That we see this play out in an ecosystem. We see this play out in our days where things build up and compound. So do not underestimate your small steps, or do not underestimate corners that have not been shone light into, and do not underestimate um, the little things and the impact that they can have, truly. And do not underestimate the capacity that you have, for all of this talk about poisons and weapons and radiation. Um, your frequency is also a weapon, or tool, is probably a better word for it. Your frequency can also combat these things. So if you're mindful of your frequency, then you can go against these frequencies that are being emitted. Then you can also be a signal in the world, rather than just absorbent to the many signals that we are assaulted with, truly. Um, That doesn't have to take the form of fasting either. For sure, detox purge. If you've taken the fucking jab, get it out of you ASAP. Um, but on top of that, uh, when you continue to nurture yourself uh, in ways that you are mindful of, in ways that feel right, in ways that uh, beyond even feel right, in ways that you imbue with positive energy, you will take in that energy and you will digest that energy. And if we are electrocapacitors, and have a bioelectric capacity to us, is the words that I'm looking for, then even just the water that you drink can be charged in such a way that you're nourished and able and energized in combating, again, these frequencies that we're assaulted with a frequency that is stable and that is strong. Throw away the high and low frequency jargon, because it's just another white supremacist pyramid building tactic. 100%. Whether or not they believe it or not, what they have been fed is this idea. We require lateral growth and an understanding of the spectrum of frequencies. And the sooner that you can realize that, the more stable and structured your frequency will be, rather than dismantled by the idea of high or low on any given rung. Um, let's see. The Hierophant. Ooh, okay. That's also a lot of air and water. The Hierophant is our earth, right? Is our earth and our grounding, our earth and our mineral, our source. But the Hierophant, in terms of America's uh, vulnerability, is also legal, is also rule, is also rulership, is also the framework in which it exists. Again, the framework in which it exists is upon agreement with other societies, with other governments, with other people, with other literal places, but also with our agreement. Um, I know that's very much said about complying with the IRS, or complying within certain structure. This is why lawyers exist, because they play with the semantics of these things to ultimately create loopholes within the framework or the contract that is created. This is also why, as silly as it sounds, if you ever trade in specific services or cash, get an invoice or a contract, because it designates the framework of a given agreement. That's all America is. They designated a framework and we chose to agree to a certain extent or not. Um, there is a loophole. There is always a loophole. There's always a loophole. It's just a matter of researching to find it, which is also something that comes up a little bit later, but I can go into now, the Nine of Hearts. There's something very studious about the Nine of Hearts. There's something very much about uh, blurring these lines, synthesizing, maybe even organizing around and with it. And that's not to say to assimilate, that is to say to acclimate. You can only survive in a different terrain if you understand the surroundings and the ways that it works. That is your way out of the maze. Understanding the framework of language, of the language that we use, of English as a costuming language, is also a key point in understanding the framework of truth. This is something that I go thoroughly into on YouTube for my necromantic autopsy of truth, which sounds more goth than it is really just a semantic and etymological and linguistic study of very commonly used words like good or bad or truth or lie or law. And the deeper we go, the more clear the concept gets. And I go through it in my native language, but absolutely dig into those words and apply them to languages that you find yourself uh, remembering. What I also picked up with this Hierophant, especially as a vulnerability, is pyramid structuring, which again is a misnomer. Even within this, it is not just a triangle up, it is a triangle down, it is a full Merkaba. There's something hidden in that structure as it is presented, period. We know that now even with pyramids in their presence, in their present state, with sonar imaging capturing that there is in fact more beneath the surface. This can be said even about burial mounds or mysterious mounds in the plains, because they were dug into, they were excavated, and there was always something underneath. So consider that with pyramid structure, there's always something underneath, or something that it is alluding to or magnetizing. With that being said, the Hierophant also seems to be very insecure and hoarding. There's also more prevalent than ever a shadow behind him, if you can see. Which is again the hidden aspect, the shadow aspect of the pyramid, the ways in which bypassing is a part of America in general. It's not just a spiritual community, woo-woo community thing. America would be nothing if not for its bypassing and its secrecy. Its reputation has somehow been some of the best kept secret and some of the most excused in all of the land, if you think about it. For all of the blood on American hands, we still all just hate other countries for some reason, or misdirect that anger towards somebody else for something that they learned from America. A really good example of that is the Germans, who were even, are still very publicly shamed and held to it. I know so many people that are ashamed of being German or afraid to speak up about it. Likewise, Jewish people who are afraid to identify themselves as such because of the climate in the world, and that's because people are afraid to be around them just as well as people are enraged by some of them that are caught in the lie of their own propaganda. which is also something that this Eight of Wands comments on. Like, what a better distraction than to misdirect energy, to overwhelm and to misdirect. That is like uh, the key moves of this character of America, really. Um, There's great withholding of information in this Hierophant, which I know I've said before, but it also is very much in the ways that things are pieced together. That's like the key of gatekeeping. It's the key of legal loopholes. It's the reason that jargon is so hard to digest or understand. But it's also why financial literacy is exceedingly important. It's also why emotional literacy is so exceedingly important. Um, we weren't given a whole picture when we were put in a school system or raised in this structure. So it is up to us to find the corner pieces to this puzzle, rather than just believing whoever is telling us that it's a full picture, because it is not. It's like, legitimately, if you were to buy a puzzle from the store and it said it's 150 piece puzzle, and then you put the puzzle together and there's only 50 pieces in there, uh, are you just going to look at the box and see that, and look at the picture and see that, and be like, yeah, no, you're totally right, it is, this is all it's supposed to be? Or are you going to investigate? Are you going to get curious? Are you going to go on a journey to find these bits of information, not pieces of yourself, but pieces of information? Like, this is the key point of video games. It's not pieces of yourself. You remember things, sure. You find things, sure. But you're not looking for yourself. You're looking for information, for resources, and piecing together the corners of this piece, of this puzzle, um, rather than taking somebody's word for it that it's done. Um, the Page of Swords follows this, which I think America's vulnerability. America as a corporation and as a cult capitalizes on our overwhelm because it keeps us in a place of passivity or rage. We are either burnt out and depressed, or we are on the brink of psychosis, or we are on the brink of a breakdown, or we are on the cusp of suicidal rage. I'm, I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying that, actually. Um, And like, even studies show that the more aware you are, sometimes the more stressed you are. But the more ignorant you are is not the more blissful. That is a counterintuitive metric, a false one entirely, a fraud of a metric, really. Um, and so, if you reside on this land and consider yourself a part of it, your strength and weakness is more so in the balance. You are and ought not be, uh, we are and ought not be, just subject to the emotional binary of passivity or rage. We ought to uh, understand a very complex relationship and all of the options outside and in between those things. Uh, Passivity and rage is a false binary of emotions, and one we ought move beyond, wherever that is, on the outskirts of. I don't care. But understand that there are more options, and that we are exactly where America wants us if we are stuck in our own passivity or enraged. Uh, Either way, you're either stuck or you're exploded and gone. You're stuck or you're combusting, and not with any direction. And that is not good for the cause. That ends up breaking us down. Um, There's something about seeing your past clearly, understanding who you are, seeing your past clearly, uh, seeing beyond the patterns of habit that maybe you've been, and for sure holding some compassion for that in you and in the bigger picture of things. And that's not to say forgiveness or anything, because we're talking about America here. But that is to say, uh, hold it to the light. Like, has anybody considered that, much like Germany, like, is very upfront about its history. Like, it's not a dishonor to be very honest about America, and then ideally we would be able to, be like, look at where we've been and look at where we are now. But unfortunately, we can't do that, and the murky past is repeating itself again and again and again. There's something here about hiding, and that's, yes, hiding the past, but also, are we hiding ourselves um, from our own capacity to cluster or bushel together and grow together and create like a bit of paradise in misery, because that does change things, that does change the frequency, um, that does give us cover and shelter and refuge. Um, and it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. It just takes, I mean, I shouldn't say it doesn't take much. It takes every particle of you. It takes every bit and every particle of you to imagine what it would be like to be relaxed in a state in which feels much more stable, much more structured, much more uh, full of ease, much more joyful, and be there. Carry yourself into that place, um, so that you exist in there. Like, as much of a warrior as this character is, they're not necessarily on a journey, they are already there. And so another thing that America absolutely capitalizes on is this idea of like American dream. They sell and market this idea, and it's the old bait and switch, just so they can reap you for everything that you're worth and exploit you. And sorry, my phone's going off. And when you see that you are being sold something, you can decide for yourself whether or not you actually want it or need it. It's 100% like, again, pyramid structure, pyramid scheme, marketing scheme. We don't like being ripped off in those contexts, so why are we allowing it in our life context? Why do we get ripped off by America? Selling this false idea of a dream when really it's just this consumerist scheme. They've never advertised stability to us. They've never advertised uh, a healthy, tall structure. They advertise war and posturing, and quite honestly, it's also to keep us afraid. What a show of power. What a show of force. Not power. This can be power because it is not forceful. Um, dun, 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 dun. Hmm. As far as ways that we can combat it, organize, synthesize. Uh, your speech and your truth is a form of rebellion. Your honor is a form of rebellion. Honor the way that you speak with action. Um, so a lot of people are just venting. A lot of people are just stressed. Cool. Stress to your fucking notebook instead of out loud. Stop feeding into the frequency and find the kind of frequency that you want to put out. Because you can unleash in a notebook, you can unleash in your notepad or in your notes. Um, but you give it more life, you give it more breath, the same way we give more fear to ghosts when you just vent in that or release in that or what have you, rather than take it and sift through it and find some glimmers and then become that frequency. Honestly, the same thing with like heartbreak. Cool, yeah, pour your heart out into a notebook and then understand what it is about you that is still holding on to that and reconcile with that, and then take the pieces of you that are going to remember that and learn from that and move forward. It's one of my favorite questions to ask on first dates is, what do you think you learned from your last relationship? And that's the vibe that we got to move forward in. Um, Beyond just speech and action, again, getting very clear about defining your key terms, getting very clear about what truth means to you and how you structure that, again, with my necromantic autopsy of truth, or perhaps even in discovering it in your own language, but using that and the etymology and linguistic study of it as a bolster for that journey. Um, but also in the midst of all of the pressures of law and the assaulting of frequency, um, consider your heart. Again, this metric, this binary metric of passivity or rage, is also not healthy grounds for your heart. Studies show that masking or oppressing emotion can cause your heart to shrink or grow uh, beyond its natural state and in a very dangerous way. Stress can also absolutely exacerbate that and those circumstances as well. Um, and and we absolutely live in a time where people are having greater uh, and more common heart issues, tachycardia, etc., etc. Um, Beyond that, there's also some new research to suggest that, well, to state that men die at a higher percentage and rate of broken hearts or a specific kind of tachycardia, where the heart's more likely to like swell and stop or shrink and stop. Um, so men die of broken hearts more. But the funny thing is that's not what I took out of that study. To me, that is very indicative of poor regulation skills, poor emotional coping skills, poor biophysical regulation skills, and is in fact a form of self annihilation. It's interesting how much men try to find reasons to like hate women or somebody else or something else, and in reality, they hate the system that they've created for themselves. And so there is absolutely an element of our own masculinity that is upset with us or with ourselves for agreeing to a system that is not doing us well, but is doing exactly what it said it would do. Um, and so we are all the better in this wild state of world, um, honoring our truth and our speech and emotional integration and regulating, regulating, regulating. Because we have to be able to acclimate to stressors rather than be dominated or ruled by them. We have to be able to acclimate, not assimilate. Assimilate requires your passivity. Assimilate requires your consent. Maybe not consent, but assimilate requires your participation in it. It requires you to blend in to the frequency rather than to have your own. When we acclimate, our frequency impacts the other frequency and they level. This is why yogis meditate in the mountains. They reach higher altitudes and they engage in vigorous breath work to acclimate their bodies to barometric pressures and temperatures. This is also very true of scuba diving. We uh, have to acclimate the body and the pressure capacity in the lungs as we descend and as we rise. And sometimes that requires a little bit more patience, or what happens? You get the bends, and you get bubbles in your blood. And it sure as fuck feels like that is happening now for a lot of people anyway, whose blood is boiling. Um, your study and your awareness and your knowledge is absolutely power. Your knowledge of self is absolutely a form of power and is a way that your frequency combats the frequencies that we are around and keeps your mind healthy and keeps your body healthy. My utmost again, regulate, 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 regulate. Um, Breath work, breathing, just awareness, just bringing awareness to your breathing, bringing awareness to the subtle energies in the strange biochemical electromagnetic ecosystem that our body is. Damn. And we allow our hearts to follow that. Because this is very much the bottom of the deck, is also very much uh, you making up your mind about what it is that you want to do or how you're going to change this or how you're going to impact it and who you are despite the world that you are in and letting your heart follow that. It's like looking to the sky and learning how to fly. Or I imagine what people say for skydiving even is like you just got to look into the horizon and like let it take you. Um, you just kind of gotta lean into it. You gotta lean into the growth. Lean into the growth spurt because it's gonna be humbling. But with that, I suppose my ramblings are over. I got what I needed out of this. I hope you did too. And if you found this interesting, wonderful. Please check out more of the offerings that I have available so that we may continue to combat the frequencies that assault us and stabilize in a very unstable world. Um, and with that, Tonedakoi, Shileo, Shilekoya, Squista.